Hello all, today we'll be going through my process of planning a story around a main character, and I will demonstrate this process with the character I created in my video before this one. That will be Charlotte. So go get a notebook and a writing tool because we are about to begin. You have your character now, but what to do with them? While it's fun to sit around daydreaming about random scenes with them, it's even better to put a story together so that you can brainstorm about them and eventually write about them. Or not, this plan should work for comics too, so you'll draw. First, and this is the most crucial step, is to brainstorm. This is where all of your ideas will come from, so that's why I say it is so important. You may want to experiment throughout the process of making your story to help yourself figure out what conditions are best for your creativity so that you can effectively brainstorm. For example, I can't have music when I'm trying to think, and I have to do it before nighttime because around the time I usually sleep, my brain just shuts down and I can't focus anymore. So, we've already got the basics for our character. Now we need to link those details to some sort of the events. The character I've developed is a young girl with a stuffed toy companion. The girl and her stuffed toy are living in an abandoned orphanage and there is something paranormal going on. Also, the girl's mother is a thief and owns a toy shop. From these details, I like to pick a theme and a topic for the story, then branch off from there. And by topic, I mean what kind of elements are in this story. In my case, it is a paranormal, family, crime story. But your story's topic could be a vampire fantasy journey, or a monster romance, or a historical retelling where everyone is cats. Who knows, it's up to you. Or you can pick from a specific genre, which you will then have some basic tropes to build off of. And for the theme, my story is about family, growing from mistakes, and morality. I chose these themes because I thought that family could be from the mother-daughter relationship, growing from mistakes could lead to a change in the mother where she stops thieving, and morality is the mother learning that from her mistakes and not doing bad things anymore. Now we have some ideas on what the story will be about, so we can make up a basic premise. We can do this with some question starters. Who? Who are your characters? Why is their story important? What archetypes do they fit into, and how could that link to the type of story you're writing? Where? What settings will we visit in this story? What? What are the topics and themes? How do they relate to each other? Why? Why is the story happening now? Why to these characters? And the how is your full story premise. Now I'll quickly go through my process of brainstorming the premise for my story. So I knew that Charlotte, her mother, and her cat toy had ended up in the orphanage because they didn't have enough money to keep their house, so they decided to live in a thieving trade house that Charlotte's mother works at. First, I thought, why are the thieves doing their business here? Well, maybe it was because a majority of them came from the orphanage. So why is the orphanage abandoned? My two thoughts that came were a nasty fire had happened or the owner was found to be corrupt. And I went, you know what, I'm going to combine the two ideas. So the owner was corrupt and taught the kids at the orphanage how to be criminals of different types. Then the owner raised one as an arsonist who decided to burn down the orphanage. Now where does the paranormal aspect come into play? Well, one of the orphans didn't make it out of the fire and died in the orphanage, and now they haunt it and twist everything inside to be monstrous. This explains why the cat, Rainbuttons, has an evil monster form. It is because of the ghost. And my character Charlotte, who is an explorer, hero type of person, will investigate the paranormal happenings. Although there are still many questions to ask, let's just summarize the story premise and leave those for later. So the story premise is, orphans were raised as criminals by a corrupt orphanage owner, and one of the orphans burnt down the orphanage. One of the kids was left inside at this time and died, now haunting the orphanage. The children that did escape came back to the orphanage and started a thieving trade, and Charlotte's mother is a part of it. When Charlotte's father finds out, he leaves them and they can't afford to live in their house anymore, so they live at the abandoned orphanage, where Charlotte has to discover the terror that was inflicted on the kids in the orphanage through the paranormal activity. Now we want to figure out how to deepen the story. What exactly happens? To begin with, we can do this by going through the 3-act structure and asking some question starters. Act 1. What? What main events happen or key information is revealed? Typically we want to see how their life was before when it was normal, then see what influenced a change in the character's life to be how it is now. Where? What settings will we explore? When? What time does this take place? How much time has elapsed? Are there any flashbacks? Who? What characters do we meet? It's important we meet the protagonist and the antagonist now, and especially go into more depth about the protagonist and who they are. Why? Why is this happening now? Why couldn't these events happen any sooner or later than they did? Or is it very sudden, therefore it could have happened at any time? Why do these characters have to go through this? Act 2. What? What happens now? At this point, the character has a distinct goal that they are chasing. All stories will have a character goal, even if it's hidden. Like maybe the character's goal is to figure out their goal, which may not seem like a goal at first, but it is. We all want to see the protagonist trying and failing at things. They can't be perfect at everything first try. Once you're closer to the midpoint of your story, we learn a key piece of information for the character to start getting wins. Where? What settings will we encounter now? Have previous settings changed? Who? Have we met new characters? Have old characters died? We should have a pinch point by now, which is a scene where we get a glimpse of the antagonist. Why? Why has your protagonist gotten to this point? What makes them want something so bad that they keep trying and failing to get it? Act 3. What? What happens now? Did the character reach their goal? Usually there is some kind of low point for the protagonist, where they may want to give up, or they do give up for a period of time. Then something makes them believe in themselves again and they reach the final battle, or the climax, which doesn't necessarily have to be a battle. Then we see the aftermath of this shocking climax, where the tension of the story is released and we get to understand things. Where? Have the characters ended up back where they were, but everything has changed? Or have they reached somewhere new? Do they have to return home now? Who? How have your characters changed? What was the character arc? Which we'll talk about in more detail soon. Will we think about those who we lost or gained along the way? What roles do the characters play in their lives now? And why? Why does it end now? Why does the main character deserve what happened in the climax, or do they deserve it at all? We will now go over character arcs and how to relate them to the story plan you now have. A character arc is how the character changes over the course of the story. This could be in attitude, beliefs, age, behavior, and appearance. In most cases, it will be in a change of attitude or belief. In Act 1, we will see how the character was before the event that changed their world. Then we see their goal, but sometimes they're reluctant to change, and they do not accept the new goal until closer to the second act. In Act 2, we see the character chase their goal and how their new world could be slightly changing their ideas about things. They will experience obstacles which makes them question how things really are in the world. At the midpoint, there's a big, satisfying shift in the character. To make the shift in the character's worldview satisfying, you had to properly build it up in the earlier parts of the second act, and even in the later parts of the first act. How you do that is mostly exclusive to your story, but a good tip is to make the character's goal contradictory to their beliefs they have at the start of the story. The character may think that their goal fits in with their ideology at the start, but then slowly the goal changes with the character to reveal the underlying truth of the goal, which is what your character must discover at the midpoint. In the third act, we see a low moment for the character because everything has changed for them and they are struggling to deal with it. Then by some circumstances, they get their stuff together and return to the fight. This is when they reach the climax. After the climax, we get a closer look at how the character has changed, how their goals have changed, and how they are coping with the differences. After this step, you want to narrow each scene further down with who the perspective character is, dialogue, foreshadowing, your prose style, subplots, and more. Speaking of subplots, I will mention that subplots are helpful to flesh out your plot. They can be from a completely different character's point of view, and they can have a different time frame from the main story, but they always link into the theme somehow. Now here are some basic world building tips so that you can create your stories, your settings for the characters to interact with, and let all of your events come to life. These are the things you will need to consider for world building if you're creating your own world. Economy, government, legal system, foreign relations, politics, war, trade routes. The land. Physical and historical features, climate and geography, natural resources, population, rural factors, urban factors, migration. Society and culture, art, entertainment, architecture, calendar, daily life, diet, education, customs, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, language, gestures, history, fashion, ethics and values, religion and philosophy, social organization, countries, and then magic and science. Magic, how it relates to technology, the rules of the magic, medicine, how science relates to the technology, transportation and communication. It's only necessary for you to consider all of these things if you're coming up with a world of your own, but if it's set in our world or a world similar to it, you need to only consider this condensed list of smaller things that will affect your characters. What level of income does the area have? Were there any historical events that still affect the characters? Are there any geographic features of the land that form obstacles for your characters? What parts of our society affect your character the most? If you include magic in a world like ours, you need to go into more depth with it than anything else of what I just mentioned, as it is unfamiliar to the reader and they can't infer anything about the magic system because it's not something they could have experienced. So I hope you've enjoyed, thanks for watching, and goodbye.